Oh, yes. I hope you folks have gotten your cocktails in place. I hope you popped your popcorn, and I hope you guys have your notebooks out because we are ready to rock and roll with some DFS. Happy Friday, everybody. I am excited to kick this episode off. And of course, y'all know I can't do it by myself. I'm just one person. So I had to bring one of my favorite co-hosts I've ever had in the history of all of my shows. One of my favorite guests, Rosalie Michaels, into the show. What's going on, Rosalie? How you doing tonight?
You really know how to butter a girl up, I tell you right now. So, Friday night, cocktails, football, fun people. I know, Chase, you're one of my favorite people to talk football with too. So,
oh, stop it. Now you're just flattering me. I wasn't even buttering you up. It was that wine over there, the buttery mouthfeel of maybe, whatever you're drinking over there, maybe a Chardonnay. Or is that a
yes,
Pinot
it's a Chardonnay. I'm a classy girl.
There you go. There you go. I love it for you. I love it for us. I love this slate this week, right? Because this slate is so intriguing. Every single week we've had these shit slates. These slates that, like, there's no games over 50 points or even 48 points. And this week we actually have one, which is so weird to say because with the flex scheduling and just the way the season's gone, we just haven't had very many high scoring games. Typically we have to choose between which stacks we want to go with because there could be 5 games that score over 50 points. This year that hasn't been the case. Now, we've still had games that have gone over 50 points, but when we look at it, who would have guessed that, the Commanders and the Eagles would have gone, to the levels that they went last week? What did that hit over 65 points or something insane?
Yeah. Let me see. They went over by 26.5 points. So almost 70 points. It was 69 points. So yeah. Well, that's the thing. How is Vegas getting it so wrong? Because I was looking at the over unders, right? And how many we've had 8 hit the under, last week. But when the overs are hitting, they're hitting by a lot. Yes. So Vegas is just getting these very, very wrong, which is weird because they're usually super good at it, right? That's their one job. So it's
one job.
Their one job. So, but it's the games that are unexpected, like you said, like the Philly and Washington, New Orleans and Indianapolis, right? Going for 21.5 over. Let me see. There was another one that I saw on here too that was just a huge amount over. And you're like, why? Oh, well, the Rams in Dallas, I think we expected to go over by a lot. But why wasn't it in the 51 range anyway?
Yeah, why wasn't it bet up? Why wasn't it put up to that point? And it's just, it's strange how Vegas has been getting things wrong. But it's like, I wouldn't even predict a lot of these errors that Vegas is making. Like if you gave me that over under, I would say, maybe bump it up a point or two, but I'm not talking about bumping it up 20 points or 10 points or even 5 points. I mean, it's pretty bizarre. And this week, I guess we have a clash of a lot of elite level quarterbacks. They're going to be, I'm just kidding. I can't even keep a straight face when I say that. I mean, we have like 8 different backup quarterbacks they're going to be playing this week. And it's absolutely going to be a shit show, but that's what we're here for. And that's what we love. Now,
yeah, that's the beauty of what we do, right? I mean, it's like, Clayton Tune is starting at quarterback this week.
Yes.
Did you think you'd be saying that mid-season?
I mean, I thought there might be a slight possibility because I thought that he was going to be able to run with it in week 1 and then be able to take it up until Kyler, ends up playing. But it's so weird because Kyler could have played potentially this week, but they want to make sure he's up to speed, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And against a Cleveland defense that has been really, really good. That Cleveland defense has been really good. So why would you? It's not like the Cardinals are fighting for a playoff spot here. You know what I'm saying?
So close.
Close.
The Cardinals have surprised us. The Cardinals have done a lot better thus far in the season. But we are here, Rosalie, to talk about some DFS, right? I could talk about the Cardinals all night. I could talk about how, the draft picks are lining up and the Cardinals are actually in a really good position to succeed. But we got to talk some DFS because it's just a weird, strange week once again. Not any more weird than what it has been. But at least we have the one game, right? The one game that we think might be chalk, and that's going to be the Cowboys and the Eagles game. We're going to see, Jalen Hurts probably the top owned quarterback, or up there in terms of where he positions himself, at least 15%. We're going to see AJ Brown north of probably 18%, maybe even 20%. I'm looking at Dallas Goedert and Swift, most likely above 15%. So we're going to see a lot of talk over there. Meanwhile, Dak Prescott, probably in the top 5 in terms of most owned. We have CeeDee Lamb, who is probably going to be top 5 most owned, if not the most owned. I know that he's not projected to be there right now, but I'm pretty sure he's going to end up there. Meanwhile, Jake Ferguson, I mean, the guy's tied with Travis Kelce in terms of leading the league for red zone targets. So you know that he's going to end up there because the Eagles have suffered up against wide receivers in the middle of the field. So, and then Tony Pollard, who I don't really love this week, is still projected to be chalk. So it's very weird week. It's like, do we want to go out and do we want to risk some of these plays in this game and just ride the chalk, because they're expensive too? We can't talk about getting, Hurts in the same lineup as Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert and CeeDee Lamb, and Tony Pollard. You just can't do it because they're all expensive. So is there an angle that you're looking at for this game before we start talking about the lineups that you actually would want to attack?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you want a piece of that game because it is going to be a high scoring game. It's a division rivalry, division matchup. The two top teams in that division, Dallas versus Philly. It's always such a show, and I think it's going to be a huge fireworks show. It is hard, but those high prices of some of these players, I think I'm looking more like the Brandin Cooks type of space, with Gallup not, questionable still. I didn't see if he's, where his status is right now, but it's still questionable, and obviously CeeDee Lamb. I mean, how after last week, and how can you not want CeeDee Lamb? But he is going to be, like you said, probably the most owned in this game. So I think I don't mind the Ferguson pick because it is such a good matchup and he's going to be a little bit cheaper than some of these other guys. But yeah, I think maybe you go to some of those second and third tier guys for maybe a dart throw in that game, as opposed to paying up for the big guys, except for Dak. I think that Dak is somebody that you definitely could look at.
Yeah. And Kevin Byard, speaking of, Kevin Byard got traded over to the Eagles, which is their biggest hole on defense, was covering the middle of the field. So now it's like, okay, do they double team CeeDee Lamb on these crossing routes that we know he's more than capable of running? Do they put Kevin Byard potentially on Jake Ferguson to prevent, some of these bigger plays down the seam? It makes things very interesting in terms of how you want to attack this game. But I will say a guy that I'm going to be playing a lot of is going to be Devonta Smith, because he's projected to have almost no ownership. We know that he's more than capable of putting up a big game. We know that leverages you off of AJ Brown, especially if you go on the Cowboys side and you play like Dak Prescott. We talk about Jake Ferguson, CeeDee Lamb, and then you run it back with Devonta Smith, because you can't run that back with both AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. And we know that most of the run backs are going to involve some form of AJ Brown in that lineup, because guess what? The running backs really don't do anything up against Dallas either. They have to stay in and they have to pass block. So what DeAndre Swift has been doing, outside of maybe a couple of screens that he could break big, but that's not going to be enough volume for DeAndre Swift to really pay off his price. So I really like Devonta Smith on this run back. I kind of wanted to get this out of the way just because I know that a lot of podcasts are going to be talking about it, everybody. We will hop on to some of these other matchups as well, but I just wanted to get this out of the way. Rosalie, is there any other angle that you could see taking with this matchup? Maybe a Tony Pollard type play?
I'm fading Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard, though he's getting a lot of opportunity, he's not been super what's the word I'm looking for?
Efficient or productive?
Productive is a good word there. He hasn't been
efficient, productive,
exactly.
Advantageous to put into your lineups.
Yeah, it's just it's been kind of ugly. It has not been at all what I'd like it to be for a Tony Pollard. We're used to back in the day of when Ezekiel Elliott would get the ball, there's just that domination. I don't get any domination out of Pollard. So he's not somebody that I'm going after in this game. And yeah, when it comes to the Cowboys defense, it's probably the easiest space to go against them, but they're still really good against the run as well. So yeah, we expect it to be high scoring. And if we expect it to be high scoring, we know that Philly's going to have to throw the ball a lot, which is why I haven't completely pivoted off of Jalen Hurts, just because that he's going to be actively involved in the game the entire time. But the Cowboys, they give up, they've only given up 4 rushing touchdowns on the year, 1 passing touchdown on the year. This is not a rushing game that I'm going to go after. And I've never understood the Pollard love, and it's just kind of playing itself out for me this year, where it's like he's not the answer to the run game for the Cowboys. He's just not.
Absolutely love it. 100%. Rosalie, we got to talk some of our studs. We got to start building some lineups. People are going to start rioting in the chat if we don't start building lineups. So are you ready to do this?
Let's do it.
All right. I need everybody to, if you haven't grabbed a beer yet, go grab your beers, go grab your drinks. You have a 7-second mini bumper ready to hit you right now. All right. I hope you guys had enough time, because it is time to talk some DFS. We have some fun plays this week. We have some strong plays. We want to discuss players that you need to get into all of your lineups, or at least, a good portion of them. And Rosalie, I need to kick it off to you, because, you can't sit there and get mad at the darkness, right? You got to light a candle.
How do you know that about me?
What are you talking about? No, what?
That's one of my favorite quotes.
I didn't know you said that.
You didn't, huh? Wait, I forgot to tell you too, before we jump in there, I just got to show you my favorite sweatshirt. We talked about my favorite quotes. So this is something that every woman needs for the football season. Sorry, can't. Football. Bye.
I absolutely love that. Like, that's something I want, that sweatshirt. Like, sorry, I can't talk. Can't go on any dates. Friday nights are packed. I got to study for DFS. I got to do these DFS shows. Sorry,
right?
Can't.
Football. Bye. Yeah. So, if you guys, I think everybody needs this shirt. They've got it in sweatshirt, t-shirts. It's on the daily for me that I wear it now, just so people understand. Don't talk to me. I got football. So send me a message on Twitter, and I'll send you the link for it.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
So, but yes, it's better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. Let's go.
All right. So, like, which players are we running out there this week? Which people do we love to be the base to our lineup builds?
Yeah, I am. For me, you like you said, you have to look at these slates and you have to figure out where is the Las Vegas odds makers getting it wrong. I personally think it's going to be in the New Orleans Chicago game, specifically on the New Orleans side, right? The over under there is only 41, but New Orleans is favored by 9 points. And I think that that's going to be an easy cover for them. So I Derek Carr, obviously not a bad choice, but I'm going with Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara is really the cornerstone of that offense. New Orleans versus Chicago. Chicago, first of all, has given up 17 passing touchdowns on the year. 5 of those to running backs. So you know that he's going to be able to get it done on the ground. You know he's going to be able to get it done in the air. And yeah, Chicago's actually given up the 3rd least amount of rushing yards to opposing offenses, but they give up the 7th most amount of fantasy points to running backs. So what is that telling you? That's telling you that those running backs are getting into the end zone quite a bit, and they're giving up the 4th most amount of points overall to opposing offenses. So that 17 passing touchdowns have a lot to do with that. So I like Alvin Kamara. When you look at touches, the touch leaders, he's second to only Saquon Barkley in terms of touches per game. He gets 25 touches per game. It's insane. So when we talk about opportunity, when we talk about, juicy matchups, Alvin Kamara is my boy this week.
It's really funny because I was just looking something up earlier today, and I realized that both CMC and Alvin Kamara, although the differential in their games played is about 10 games,
Mm-hmm.
CMC started 13 more games than Alvin Kamara has throughout his career. 13 more, although Alvin Kamara's played 10 more games. But on a per touch basis, they're almost identical in stats throughout their career. And I just thought that was a really cool, fun fact. But I love Alvin Kamara in terms of the focal point of this game because, man, with Tyler Bagent, with the way that this Bears team is going, I don't foresee it to be so much of a high scoring game, but I do foresee points to be scored in terms of a concentration.
Mm-hmm.
So I like Jamal Williams as an option. I really like Alvin Kamara as an option. You know, there's another player that you're probably going to talk about here in a little bit, so I don't want to ruin that. But Chris Olave is a guy that has, just just eliminated the league in terms of the air yards that they've allowed or that he's received, and he just hasn't produced at that high end level that we've expected in 2023. I still think that he could put it up against Chicago Bears in this weak pass defense.
Yeah. So and it is. You look at, I originally had looked at Derek Carr, but I think that making Alvin Kamara my focal point, I'm able to, there's some really good kind of sneaky choices in terms of lower ownership, lower price points at that QB position where I can take Alvin Kamara, and I love the Saints D up against it, stacked along with it, because you just mentioned it, right? Tyson Bagent. First of all, when you look at the amount of, the Saints have 9 interceptions already on the year. 9 out of 8 games so far, 7 that they've played. So 9 interceptions on the year. And last week, what did Tyson Bagent do? It was pretty ugly, right? Tyson Bagent has, in the 2 games he's played, he's completed 56 of 80 passes for 477 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, and then fumbled twice. So there's a nice little opportunity there for the Saints D to rack up some good points as well.
And I talk about it every week. My favorite defense is that defense that has an opportunity to get the strip, sack, fumble recovery, and then take it for a touchdown. Those are typically the defenses that end up scoring the most. The biggest opportunity, 4 points scored on a defensive play. So I love those opportunities, and I think that's right up the alley in terms of a stack that I would like to build on. In terms of the quarterback stacks, some of the stacks that I actually really like this week. I mean, I love the Seahawks-Ravens game, and I guess we can go into that in a little bit, but I like both sides of that, obviously more so the Ravens side, but you never know what's going to happen with the Ravens offense. You could have Lamar Jackson throw for 5 touchdowns. You could also have him throw for none. So, that's just as big as a dart throw for me as a 5K quarterback, in terms of what you could get versus, what the risk is. Meanwhile, I love that the Browns are, going to have Watson back this week. Prior to the show, we talked about Arizona. Not a great matchup. We could get left with a bunch of short field situations. And if you remember back in 2022, when they faced Washington had an abysmal offense at the time, turned the whole ball over a whole bunch. I think Watson ended up having 3 or 4 total rushing / passing touchdowns because he was left at the 40-yard line 3 or 4 times. And that was the Watson, get right type game. I think that could happen up against Arizona. Meanwhile, the Texans and Bucks matchup is very interesting. We can dive into that here in a little bit. Let's go ahead and let's get a lineup up here. Let's start this build and figure out exactly where we would like to go.
Okay.
So, where do we want to start at quarterback? Do we want to start at the high end? Do we want to start at the low end? We brought up Seattle. We brought up, the Ravens. We also brought up CJ Stroud. Mayfield. Where are we feeling?
I like CJ Stroud a lot this week versus Tampa. He is just very interesting to me, and I can't wait to see his progression. I also like Dak Prescott. If you want to go, I mean, 6,500 for Dak is not bad at all. If you want to get a piece of that game, he's going to throw some touchdowns. There's going to be some touchdowns for Dak. There's going to be some good yardage there for Dak. So I don't hate that at all. It's going to be a high scoring game. Philly gives up a lot of passing yards to opposing offenses. They also have given up 16 passing touchdowns on the year. So whereas, we were just talking about the rushing defense of Philly, really good, 2 rushing touchdowns. So I like Dak here if we're going to go on the higher end, but I don't hate CJ Stroud either.
I think we're obligated to build at least one Dak Prescott / Jalen Hurts lineup. So would you rather build a Jalen Hurts lineup or would you rather build a Dak lineup?
No, I do not like Jalen Hurts this week. It's just, I think he's too expensive for the Dallas Cowboys offense. I mean, defense.
So let's do Dak Prescott, especially after his explosion last week. It was like Mike McCarthy went in throughout the bye week and he's like, oh yeah, we can pass the ball like Kellen Moore used to.
Mm-hmm.
Kellen Moore was the guy that actually knew how to run this offense. Maybe I should take some notes from him and do what we did last year and get CeeDee Lamb involved, get the tight end involved,
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, boom, it worked. So,
have you noticed that these wide receivers, when they start to complain, start to chirp a little bit, something happens? What happened when Jamar Chase started to chirp a little bit? Something happened. CeeDee Lamb started to chirp a little bit. Something happened.
Devonta Adams is like clockwork.
Devonta Adams started to chirp a little bit. He's also in my lineups this week. I love him.
I love that. I love that take. Devonta Adams is that dude that chirps and he gets it all the following week. We'll see what happens with that. But let's go ahead and let's build Dak Prescott. And we talked about Jake Ferguson. We talked about CeeDee Lamb. Is this 2 players we want to get in our lineup with Dak Prescott, or do we want to try and go a skinny stack and go somewhere else with where we want to go? Do we want to try Michael Gallup and Cooks?
I would go Cooks over Gallup just because I don't think that Gallup's fully ready yet. Cooks is getting the eye. He's getting the eye from Dak. So, and he's a little bit cheaper than CeeDee. I do like the Ferguson stack as well, but you gotta go with one of these Cowboys. And if it's CeeDee, I don't hate it. CeeDee's gonna get stuff, but he's also gonna draw the most coverage as well. So
can Dak get to his ceiling without CeeDee Lamb though? That's the question.
Well, I'm not saying CeeDee's not gonna get some opportunity. He absolutely is, but let's not forget how good Brandin Cooks is, how fast he actually is. I think that people have forgotten how good he is. But with Philly, they give up the most fantasy points to wide receivers. So I think you're safe with either one. You're just paying a little bit less for Cooks. So I think we've got enough money for either one. So.
Yeah, I will say that JB Prog brought up the Eagles allow a lot of points to outside receivers, and CeeDee Lamb plays in the slot. I think that they give up a lot of points to outside receivers that cross the middle, to be honest. Brandin Cooks can do that. He can beat their team deep. We watched, what was it? The score he had last week was actually a crossing route that he got the touchdown in that back left corner. So I love the Brandin Cooks take here. I do think that you need to get a little bit different. And I think that if you play a CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, Dak Prescott lineup, and then you run it back with anybody outside of Devonta Smith over there from the Eagles, you're going to end up having to pivot down to the Chuba Hubbards and, some of these other cheaper wide receivers. That's going to put you right in the same chalk as everybody else that's running out the lineups that are similar to this. So you're not going to be able to get different enough in the bigger contests to really, win any kind of significant amount of money. You're just going to be playing the same lineups as everybody else.
Yeah.
So I do like the Brandin Cooks because that differentiates it. Now we just have to decide, can Dak Prescott get to a ceiling without CeeDee Lamb getting to a ceiling? And for me, I think I'd rather go CeeDee Lamb at this point, although I do love Ferguson.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Let me do the thing. Do the thing.
Oh, I'm here. We're just gonna have this discussion because I'm far from right on a regular basis. I'm just throwing that out there. I am nowhere close to being right on a regular basis. I just get about 50% of my stuff okay, like close enough.
So are you taking a little CeeDee and you're taking a little Brandin as well?
I'm down to do both. I mean,
all right.
That's the way that Dak has to get there. Sure, you could have the touchdowns. This is the difference, right? So if we had a situation where I felt like with Sean Watson, where we're going to have opportunities for him to score because he's getting the ball at his own or at the opposition's 40-yard line. You're going to see Njoku get enough, touches or looks to be fantasy relevant.
Yeah.
I don't think that the Eagles are going to be turning the ball over on their own side of the field. I don't see Jalen Hurts turning the ball over a ton. I think this is going to be a shootout, which means that Dak Prescott is going to have long drives. They're going to have to get these breakaway opportunities or the volume. And although Jake Ferguson is valuable in the red zone, I'm looking at Brandin Cooks having a couple of breakaway opportunities because you talked about his speed, you talked about his explosiveness. Meanwhile, CeeDee Lamb is going to see the volume. So that's where I personally would like to go. If I believe that this game is going to be a shootout, it's with one of the deep targets and then CeeDee Lamb to get that volume.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, Brandin Cooks is $400 more than Ferguson. So where do you like the upside more? Yardage?
But Ferguson's chalk. Brandin Cooks is not.
Exactly. Yep. So
I'm yeah.
Glenn is laughing at Brandin Cooks. He's laughing at Brandin Cooks.
Over here in the chat, we're looking at Glenn just laughing at B Cooks. Meanwhile, Nate Liss is in the chat as well. Big shout out to Nate Liss. Good seeing you, buddy. All right, let's go ahead and let's figure out a run back. And for me, I know what one of your fades is, so we don't have to talk about him. But let's just say Devonta Smith because you leverage on the lineup as well. Are you down to play Devonta Smith, or would you rather see Goedert in the tight end position?
I think if I'm going one of the two, I'm looking at you've got more opportunity with my personal opinion with Goedert. It's just Dallas has been so good against the QBs, against the RBs, against the wide receivers. They're not giving up a lot of yardage, passing yardage. So yeah, of course they're not facing Philly each week. So that's a little bit different, but let's not forget, they did give up 3 passing touchdowns to George Kittle. So
yeah,
it's
and look at Goddard's numbers.
Could Goedert have a 2-touchdown game?
Sure, Goedert did not put out 2 of the past 4 weeks, but he's still seeing the targets: 7 targets, 5 targets, 8 targets, 9 targets with 2 touchdowns over the past 4 weeks. I mean, the opportunity is there for Goedert. We would like to see it translate more often, but when it does translate, we're talking about 18.7 fantasy points, 28.7 fantasy points, which that's the numbers you want to see. And that's the numbers you could see up against Dallas, as long as he's not asked to block. Let's go ahead. Let's get Goedert into this lineup. And let's talk about where we want to go next, because we have about 5,200. This is about the point that I like to put in a placeholder defense. I just want to get a defense in there so we know what we're working with in terms of real money, like in terms of where we can do with the other positions. I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to throw the Patriots in here. I know they're chalk and actually hate that pick, so don't let me stick with that one. But that's just where we're going to sit right now in terms of that. So now we have, I won't. Now we have 5,800. And, this is an opportunity where we could get in Alvin Kamara if we're willing to pivot down at the other positions. Do we want to do that yet, or do we want to wait?
I think let's put Alvin Kamara in and see because we've got some really, really nice value plays this week that I think we could put in there. So if we can get some Alvin Kamara love, I'd like it.
All right. We got some love for Alvin Kamara in this lineup. It actually doesn't hinder us too bad. We're still sitting here with 5K per player. I feel like we should just pivot down right now and figure out where we want to go after that. It might have to involve one of our sleepers that we might want to discuss.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a sleeper right now. I'm going to give you all a little tease. All right. I'm just going to tease it. I'm just going to stick in the tips, see how it feels. Hopefully, y'all don't hate it too much. Van Jefferson. If there was ever a time to play Van Jefferson, it would be this week with Drake London out. Right, with a defense that can be beaten deep. Meanwhile, you have Taylor Heinicke, who we know can sling the ball from time to time. Right, I've been watching Washington for years. He has that ability to get the deep ball to these guys. And honestly, I wish the Drake London was in, because Heinicke locks in to these alpha receivers. Right, he will lock in Drake London. Drake London will have the best next 10 games of his career, 8 games of his career, coming up to finish up the season because of how Heineke locks in. But for this one, he doesn't have an alpha receiver.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, Van Jefferson just is an interesting case.
I've always liked Van Jefferson. I really have. You know, his dad was a wide receivers coach for the Cardinals. Hey, everybody out there, I'm an Arizona girl. So and I love that whole thing. I liked him with the Rams, but he could never kind of pull it together with the Rams. So does he have some talent? Yeah. Is there some opportunity there? Yeah. But I mean, does Heineke go more towards the Mac Hollins kind of situation? You know, does he go more towards the a little bit more Kyle Pitts? You know, so I just don't know if Van Jefferson's gonna get the opportunity that I want him to have. But you know, yeah, the matchup against Minnie, it's good. It's real good. You don't hate it, but it's not screaming to me personally.
No, I will say this is going to be my last little vote of confidence just to see if I can get you there. And I don't know if I will or not, but
Okay.
he saw 13 snaps last
Yeah.
week, ended up converting those 13 snaps to 3 receptions on 5 targets. Didn't do much with the yards in terms of that for 24 yards, but he was at least involved in the offense.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. No,
right.
I didn't get you there. All right. No, I
What
didn't
is
get
his
you there.
price? What is his price point there?
3,600.
That's pretty cheap. It's
He
pretty
can get
cheap.
you there if he gives you a touchdown and you know a handful of yards, you're golden. But most likely he's just going to get you a handful of yards and you're going to be happy anyways.
It's pretty cheap, but let me throw this out to you and see if, because going back to that New Orleans Saints game that I love, that I really like, and somebody that I do love for his absolute like deep threat, gonna give me all the points for very little money kind of situation. What about Rashid Shaheed? 4,500. Yes, he's more expensive. You know, he's averaging 12.5 points per game. Olave, who you love, is only averaging 13.5. But, you know, last week we saw him connected on 2 long balls, including that 58-yard touchdown. Derek Carr loves this guy. Absolutely loves this guy. And yeah, I saw somebody dropped in the chat about Michael Thomas. And yes, I do like Michael Thomas as well this week. But, you know, Shaheed, he's that long dart. I'm going to get a long touchdown out of him, maybe 2. And they're throwing the ball a lot. Derek Carr, the last couple of weeks, has thrown the ball a lot, over 50 times each of the last 2 games. So what are your thoughts on that?
I like Shaheed. I'm down for that. I figured we could save like an extra $1,000 so that we could go up on 500 on each player. So that's kind of where I was coming from versus just 250. But I'm down. Let's go with Shaheed. Let's see what we're left with.
Okay.
All right. So we're drafting this player. We are left with 2 positions left. We're sitting with Dak Prescott, Alvin Kamara, Brandin Cooks, CeeDee Lamb, Rashid Shaheed, Dallas Goedert, the Patriots defense, who we're going to switch out. We need a running back and a flex position, both sitting at 5,300-ish. We can move up a little
bit of room to move out of that Patriots D.
Yeah, so, I mean, they're middle of the road, and honestly, I would take any other team outside the Patriots D just because the Patriots D is chalk this week. They're probably going to be the most or the highest percentage played player, quote unquote, out of any position on the entire board. Like they're going to see 30-40% ownership, and it's kind of weird because it's not like Washington. Sure, Washington hasn't been great. Don't get me wrong, but Washington lost 2 defensive ends. They didn't lose anybody on offense.
Yeah.
Like we're not.
And Sam Howell can play against.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen him put up huge games. So
yeah, I just don't understand the chalk aspect. It's like, oh well, Washington's selling everything that they're doing. No, they're not. They're just trying to develop youth and acquiring picks on defense.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't affect the Patriots defense whatsoever. So I'm cool with playing the Patriots if you have a certain lineup. But honestly, like that's my biggest fade of the entire week. Spoiler alert. For the next section. God, we're not staying on track with this.
All right. Not at all.
So let's go ahead and let's figure out where we're gonna go with the running back position and the flex. If I go down to this range, we're talking about like a Zach Moss type play, which I think is very interesting. Zay
Yes, I
Flowers,
love
who
Zach Moss.
oh yeah,
Love
okay,
Zach. Although, what did I just see? He is active. He is, or he's not.
yeah, he's definitely active. He's definitely playing.
Okay. I just saw some news about him, and I was like, wait, is he active? Not active. So, yeah, I like Zach Moss. I love Kareem Hunt again against Arizona.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So you like him more than like a Jerome Ford potentially?
I just know that in the red zone, they look his way. They trust Kareem Hunt. So, and in the passing game, you see a little bit more Kareem Hunt than you do Jerome Ford. I think Jerome Ford just still kind of iffy. And I know, yeah, now there's 3 heads in the backfield, right? Pierre, Kareem Hunt. But I think when it comes to touchdowns and that red zone looks, we see a little bit more Kareem Hunt. He's just the big bruiser, right? He's the
Yeah.
one that gets stuff done. Can I say get
Yo, you can say whatever you want.
right? It's I
just
do
get to my
radio, I
closing
do
line.
TV. I got to be careful. so, I like Kareem Hunt as well. Or I mean, the thing is with Zach Moss, he's what $300 more, $300 more than Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, and honestly, with Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor both, it's going to be a case of like who breaks the big one
Mm-hmm.
because we know they're going to run a lot, right? But they're both probably going to end up with 13 to 15 total touches because the running
Mm-hmm.
backs are going to get the ball 26 to 30 times most likely. Which
Yep.
one of these guys is going to break the big one? Because, either way, they're in a timeshare. And with Jonathan Taylor being infinitely more expensive, it still makes sense to put your money on Zach Moss, who's still getting those looks.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. I like Jonathan Taylor slightly more just because of the price, but
Me too.
in this situation,
Yeah.
it's a great call for this type of situation. Kareem Hunt, though, is that workhorse. We've seen him take looks away from Nick Chubb last year
Mm-hmm.
in the red zone. My biggest concern, though, is that Deshaun Watson doesn't like using the running back in the red zone.
Yeah,
He's
he
back
likes
this
to
week.
call his own number all the time. But my question is, I don't know. For me, Deshaun Watson has just been kind of a big old wimp baby.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of,
For
not
sure.
kind of, really kind of a
Yeah,
big
for
old wimp
sure.
baby. So you
Locked
can see
in.
him stubbing his toe like in the first quarter and going, I can't play anymore.
My arm doesn't throw as hard anymore. I got to take
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be the case just because of the criticism that he's come over this past week in terms of that. But I mean, I wouldn't put it past it. I wouldn't say that's not going to happen. I
Yeah.
just, with Kareem Hunt, we just see every running back that Deshaun Watson has ever played with has not
Mhm.
produced in the same level that he does whenever Deshaun Watson does play.
Yeah.
So,
And that's fair.
and that's just a concern of DFS. We look at
Mhm.
this range and every player has their concern. Every player has their red flag.
Yeah.
So it's like, which red flag do you want to take? And
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where we're lying right now. I'm gonna let
Yeah.
you make that call. Where do you want to go with this one?
Over. So we're talking Zach Moss versus Kareem Hunt. And
We
not
could even go
to
cheaper, by the way. We could go
Yeah, I
down.
know. I was looking at either Royce Freeman or who is Miles Sanders is interesting to me this week as well.
Over Chuba Hubbard, huh?
Yeah, Chuba Hubbard is the most inefficient piece of crap I've seen in my entire life. Come on, let's look at this. Like you look at his game, like his games. Okay, let's look at it. Like he had 15 touches last week, 28 yards. Okay, 19 touches, 88 yards. That was his greatest against Miami. But 9 touches, 35 yards, 14 touches, 41 yards. It's crap. It's absolute freaking crap. So they need to give the ball to Miles Sanders more. It's just I can't do anything with
That's
Chuba Hubbard.
wishful thinking, though, at its finest. That
It
sounds like me.
is.
It's like, hey, they should do this, so I'm gonna bet that they're gonna do this.
No,
That's
it's not.
never the case.
It's not just wishful thinking, though. It is. Yes, he only had 2. Miles only had 2 carries last week, which is just absolute. I mean, why do you go and get Miles Sanders? The beginning of the season, he was getting carries and he was doing fine with them, but he was getting carries, he was getting targets. And so go to your better running back. Chuba Hubbard has never proven that he was worth the jersey that his number is printed on. I'm sorry. That's just, I know that's cruel. That's absolutely cruel. But you look at Carolina versus Indy, right? This is going to be something where they need to score points. The run game is where their opportunity lies. 11 rushing touchdowns to the running back position. That's crazy. That's somewhere where I'm going to take a shot, but I'm not taking my shot with Chuba Hubbard if that's where we're going, because I don't trust him, to be honest with you. I just don't trust him at all.
That makes sense. He's a massive fade for me in terms of his ownership, so I don't hate that take. I just don't know. It's like, all right, so we can have Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor, where they're both splitting, but then Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard are both splitting as well. And honestly, like I'd much rather go with the more expensive of the team that we know is going to succeed in the run game versus the team that we don't know that's going to succeed in the run game. But I do want to throw out this one right here. Justice Hill, if you can see my screen, is an excellent option potentially this week up against a Seattle Seahawks defense, and not only bolster their run defense with Leonard Williams, but also could end up in a shootout. And we know that Justice Hill, whenever he's in, they're in shootout type situations, as long as we don't have Gus Edwards scoring 3 freaking rushing touchdowns, Justice Hill can perform at a high end level, and he's only at 600 above the minimum for running backs.
Yeah.
Are you sold at all on Justice Hill, or do we need to keep looking for another guy? Because this is going to give us a ton of room to work with in terms of moving up at that flex spot.
Here's my problem with that is I don't love the Baltimore run game. Again, when you talk about in this particular game against Seattle, I think I'd rather go if I'm looking for people in the Baltimore offense, I think I'm only really looking at Lamar Jackson, simply because, Seattle's given up 6 rushing touchdowns on the year. Not great. Not terrible, but not great either. I'm not loving it. I think that it's going to be one of those games where Baltimore doesn't score as much as they do at other times, simply because I don't think they're going to need to. I think their defense is going to do a great job containing Seattle's offense. They give up the least amount of points to opposing offenses. So I think they're going to do what needs to be done to win the game, but I don't think they're going to have to do a lot in order to do that. Personal opinion. So
all right. So
I know you love that game, though. I know you love it.
I don't love that game, but I just think it's very intriguing because that's one of the games that could hit the over if Baltimore's defense falters, which we've seen it happen in the past where they have a great defense and out of nowhere they just collapse for the second half of the season. For whatever reason that may be. It could be the offense not producing at a high level and just giving them short fields, leaving them on the field for the entire time because of early 3 and outs. There's just a whole slew of different reasons why the Baltimore Ravens defense falters. I just think that it could end up being a situation where we see a shootout, in which case I would want, Justice Hill. If we're talking about the Baltimore team actually succeeding at a high level, Jackson Smith and Jigba makes an interesting spot for the flex where we could pivot up at the running back position. Nope, not for you. that epic line of silence is great. All right, we're going back up. We need to select a player. We'll say, all right, between you had Zach Moss.
Zach Moss. I think Zach Moss is. I mean, how much are we seeing ownership on him? Is it all on
non-existence?
Taylor? Non-existent. Then I think Zach Moss is the answer there.
All right, we're going Zach Moss here, and left at the flex we have 4,800.
Okay.
All right, we in the flex at 4,800 are looking at players like Cam Akers, Samir White, Tyler Algier. You mentioned that you like Michael Thomas, but we can't play Michael Thomas with Rashid and Alvin Kamara. It just can't happen.
And let's be fair here too. Michael Thomas is at 4,700, but that's more New Orleans there that I'm trying to throw in. So there is the Royce Freeman option there too, which he had the most amount of playing time, most amount of snaps played last week against the Green Bay stupid run defense. But I think we need a little bit more cushion to get out of our situation in the in the defense that we have right now?
I don't know. I kind of look at Royce Freeman right here. It's going to give us
Okay.
an extra 200 if we want to flex. You're
Okay.
right. I mean, he scored a touchdown. He rushed for 4.9 yards per touch up against a more stout defense with the Dallas Cowboys. Like you said, Green Bay's rush defense isn't there. I'm going to plug Royce Freeman in here for now, and let's pivot over to this defense and see what we're left with.
We're left with 3,100.
3,100, and the Colts make some sense up against Carolina. We have the Texans up against Tampa Bay.
Texans defense, I'm not loving any of the wide receivers for Tampa Bay this week. I think Baker's been getting a little too big for his britches. So
honestly,
he's gotten a little cocky.
That's how Baker gets. That's how Baker gets.
I know he does.
That could happen. That could really pay off. I'm not even gonna lie.
You're talking about the Texans defense?
Yeah, I'm talking about, Baker but the Texans defense, but Baker getting too big for his britches, which essentially will, result in a meltdown. But speaking of meltdowns, I mean, God, the Seahawks up against Baltimore. The Seahawks are putting up 10.1 points per game. Baltimore has been far from, I guess, mistake-proof football.
Mm-hmm.
If they try to get into a shootout, we could see opportunities where we see some fumbles, we see some interceptions. Mm-hmm. That could result in it. But I'm down. Let's go ahead. Let's put in the Texans defense up against Baker. It just makes sense for the lineup that we're doing.
Okay.
And let's build another one as soon as we do this. Let's see. Texans done. Enter. So real quick, we have Dak Prescott, Alvin Kamara, Zach Moss, Brandin Cooks, CeeDee Lamb, Rashid Shaheed, Dallas Goedert, Royce Freeman, and the Texans defense. We feel really good about the base of Dak Prescott, Alvin Kamara, Brandin Cooks, CeeDee Lamb, and Dallas Goedert, but you could mix up that skeleton in whichever way you want it. I am hitting I'm hitting submit on that one. Not hitting deposit yet. Luckily, have not had to hit deposit yet. And while we contemplate, yes. Excuse me. While we contemplate our next lineup. Oh, yeah. Oh, you totally lost me. Now we contemplate about our next lineup. Let's go ahead and hear about Underdog, which I don't know if you guys have heard of Underdog. You probably have if you listen to the show, because I love, love, love Underdog. But let's go ahead. Let's take a quick break.
It has been 2 years since Josh Larkey paved the way for fantasy gamers to start expecting positive returns from pick'em games, specifically Underdog pick'ems. And how do you do it? Well, you look at the slate and you find a great shootout or a sneaky shootout. You also look for a shit show game. 3, 4, 5, 6 guys in one game. That's right. You can do it. You can do it. And you can 100x your payout on Underdog. Think about week 1. Jets-Bills was a shit show. Did we see the Aaron Rodgers injury coming? No, but we knew the Jets have a good defense. We knew the Bills have a good defense. Why not expect the worst? And the worst is what we got. So if you had gone Dalvin Cook less than, Garrett Wilson less than, Aaron Rodgers less than, Josh Allen less than, Gabriel Davis less than, boom, 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 you can go 6 for 6. Same thing in week 2. Oh, week 2. Oh, sneaky shootout there in Philadelphia. Minnesota's going to be in comeback mode, so we'll go Cousins, Jefferson, Hawkinson, more than, Madison, less than, but also Swift, more than. Boom, 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 boom. That's how you do it with the Underdog Pick'ems, and you use promo code Underworld to get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. You put in $100, Underdog matches that deposit up to $100 with promo code Underworld. Go start picking.
Whoosh. That's what it says. It says whoosh. What's going on, everybody? Underdog's great.
It's a good time.
It's my favorite betting app for sure. And my favorite part about Underdog is actually the in-game bets. So I was going through the math, lining up all my bets from throughout the season. And I realized that 80% of my income was actually the in-game parlays that I've been playing versus the parlays that I placed beforehand. Just because it's so predictable. Like, the other day we're sitting there, I think this was like a week or 2 ago. We were sitting there at Derrick Henry over under 22 rushing yards at halftime because he only had like 6 in the first half or something. He got
Wow.
shut down, but they weren't passing the ball at all. The offense wasn't moving. I don't remember if it was exactly Derrick Henry, but it was a player very similar to that, if not him. It turns out, yeah, he crushed that. But I mean, that's how a bunch of them were lined up, and it was just lining up for the way the game, was laid out. And it's like, oh my God, like this is
Wow.
just way too easy to make money. My underdog account is overflowing right now, and I cannot wait to get into the playoff best ball with the bank account I have rolled up on underdog. I am so excited.
Nice. Well, and I see that Jamie said the deposit match is $500 right now.
Woo! Oh, that's dope. Thank
Yeah.
you, Jamie, for giving that shout out. Rosalie, we have 10 minutes to build 2 lineups, essentially.
Okay.
I might get fired for this one because we're gonna run over, but
Let's rapid fire it.
Let's go ahead. Let's build a lineup. And before we build a lineup, let's talk about some guys that we're fading as quickly as possible. I was gonna say Amari DeMercado. Obviously, he's out now, as you informed me right before the show. So I'm gonna fade Keontae Ingram. He's not gonna be the guy this week. I don't care if he gets 20 attempts. Unfortunately, that's not going to result in a net positive for him. It could still be -5 yards rushing. I just don't love it. It's a very tough defense. I know they're going to have to run a ton with the rookie. I just don't see it. Meanwhile, my other fade is going to be Adam Thielen, who is essentially phenomenal up against man coverage. He's not phenomenal, and neither is Bryce Young up against zone. So, although I do think that there are players that we can mention here in a little bit that will succeed up against the zone coverage from the Colts, I don't think that's going to be Adam Thielen this week. And at his price, it just scares me.
Yeah. I get that on the Adam Thielen thing. He's been money in some
Great.
very choice games, but it's the Adam Thielen thing. Carolina's offense is hard to love in any way, shape, or form, right? I have told people to start Adam Thielen in their season long in certain instances. Again, matchup dependent, but this is just not a good one for him.
At his price, it just doesn't make any sense. It's like 7,100, I think, for his price right now, and 7,500. Excuse me, 7,500 for Adam Thielen this week. I'm not paying that. I just don't see him producing that level up against zone coverage. He never has.
Yeah. And for me, like, and I know we talked about this a little bit, but I maybe we can start this lineup based on my fade from this person to a different person. But we know that AJ Brown, we talked about him. He's the highest on the slate. He's averaging, over 10 targets a game, which is fantastic. That's what you're looking for. And this is a high game total that people are going to chase. He's going to be super chalky, but you look at Dallas versus the wide receiver position, and I agree with you. I would go Devonta Smith much more than AJ Brown in this, because they are going to target AJ Brown. They are going to make sure that AJ Brown is locked down. Dallas has only given up 4 total passing touchdowns to wide receivers on the season, and they haven't given up over 86 yards in a game to any wide receiver. So for me, for that highest paid player on the slate, I don't want to touch AJ Brown. But who I do want to touch, and I want to touch a lot, is Davante Adams, right? So if we're going to pay like 8,600 or in that 8,000 range, give me Davante Adams at a 8,100, because at 8,100, we were talking about this a little bit, but the players that chirp get the juice. And there's been a big shakeup over there. Everything fell apart. And Davante Adams has been chirping. This is the playmaker. Antonio Pierce, the new coach, he has said, I am a Raider at heart. He has love for this team. So what are they going to do? They're going to give it to their playmaker. Their playmaker is Davante Adams. And yes, I think Jacoby Myers gets some love as well, but they're going to target Davante Adams a lot. And when you look at Aiden O'Connell and how he's played when he's come into the game, he looks for Davante. So I think this is going to be a huge game for Davante Adams and a big bounce back spot for them. The Giants, their defense actually hasn't been terrible. It's supposed to be a low scoring game at 38 with the over under. But like we've said, Vegas has been getting it wrong. and Vegas has been getting it wrong when it comes to their Raiders. So what are your thoughts on that?
I love it. I think that it's interesting because I'm sitting there looking up Daniel Jones price, and I'm like, oh, I can't, like, I don't want to run this out, but like, it's really interesting because I want to play a Josh Jacobs lineup. I would like to play a Devonta Adams lineup. I just don't know if I can play them together. Both just have the upside, but they also both have complete downside. So it's like, oh man, if we go really super heavy on this one, is there
Yeah.
any chance that we could see this game blow up and Vegas get it wrong? I think there is a chance, but it's just so small that it's like, all right, you're wasting your money if you throw money at this matchup. If you build more than like one lineup towards it, right? And then all of a sudden, let's just say that Myers is involved over either Devonta Adams or over Josh Jacobs. Like you're essentially kind of screwing yourself because I'm not going to play multiple different lineups. The only lineup that I'm going to play is a Daniel Jones lineup with Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Devonta Adams, and then maybe like a Wan'Dale Robinson or Darius Slayton or somebody along those lines, right? Like where Daniel Jones could see the value, but you still hope that it's a Daniel Jones rushing game where he rushes for 80 yards, but he's coming off an injury. It's just every time that I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, this is a massive red flag. This is a massive red flag. It's like, I love the thought of playing one of these guys. And I think I just want to get one of these guys, in my lineup. That's what I want to build. So
what
we're
about
one
of the running backs? I know Saquon's kind of, banged up, but what about a Matt Breida flyer?
Oh God, I can't do that.
Against Las Vegas. Las Vegas is terrible against the run.
I know. And honestly, like, all right, so I'm on board with Saquon Barkley. If you want to play Saquon Barkley as like the skinny run back, I am so down with that because we're looking at Saquon Barkley stats. We have 18.8 fantasy points, 19.8. He only did a 13.8 a few weeks ago, but he still had 24 rushing attempts and then 27.2 points, 36 rushing attempts, 21 rushing attempts, 24 rushing attempts, 17 rushing attempts. Meanwhile, 4 targets. I mean, he's their entire offense right now. It's ridiculous.
He averages almost 26 touches a game.
Yeah. So Saquon Barkley should be an auto start. I'm embarrassed to bring him up previously. And it's weird too. By the way, I don't know if you've seen this. I've seen it all over the internet today. The Raiders went out, fired their GM, fired the head coach, fired the offensive coordinator, benched their starting quarterback, and they're still favored up against the Giants this week.
That's how bad the Giants are. It's just it's just. But yeah, I think a Saquon, Devonta Adams. I mean, how old school is this?
I love it. I'm down for 2018. Let's go. Did I get that year right? I think I did.
I think so. 18, 19. It was definitely pre-COVID.
Oh, 100%. All right. So now we have to figure out where we want to go for the rest of the build. And we built a mid-level type build. We can still go high end and go with Lamar Jackson, for example, and try to run him naked with like a single run back in hopes that the defense does play well. I think that's the way to go with Lamar Jackson. So you don't end up in the chalk. I still feel like Lamar Jackson's going to put up big numbers. It's just where do you want to put the money?
See, I think Lamar Jackson is still expensive at 8,200 this week.
Don't forget,
really do.
We ran out. Cam Newton naked 1 week that he was super expensive. Don't forget about that.
Yeah, I know. If you like him, I like him. I'm thinking. I mean, there's a CJ Stroud available that we talked about a little bit earlier, and so if you're going naked. If you're going naked and you really want to get risky, and go cheap on the QB, and I mean it's ugly and it's not pretty, but you got Mac Jones sitting at 4,900. Washington just got rid of their edge rushers. Washington gives up the second most fantasy points to QBs. He's definitely not going to be chalky.
Can I talk you into the Taylor Heinicke and Kyle Pitts stack? Because I mean, we're sitting there with no other offensive weapons. We talked about Mac Hollins. We talked about MVS. Neither one of us like him.
I like it.
We have to settle somewhere, right? And I think that Taylor Heinicke brings some level of, I guess, fantasy points that is magical from him. It's almost like the Fitzpatrick without the upside, but at least the floor.
No,
Plus
I
the
like
production.
Heineke. I've always liked him. I liked him in Washington. I like the bravado he brings. So I don't hate that at all.
Yeah, no, we'll bring up last week. He was in a half. He was 12 for 21 with 1 touchdown. He also still ran the ball twice for 14 yards. I mean, he has that floor. Last week, he put up 12.4 points in a half. If we can hit 18 points with him, I think we're talking about netting positive. And it's like, okay, who do we bring with him? We know that he loves the tight end. He's done really well with Logan Thomas in the past. He's made tight ends look good that are not good tight ends
Yeah.
that he's
Yeah.
played with throughout his entire career. So, and he loves the alpha on the offense. And there is no alpha in terms of receiving capabilities outside of Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Pitts, exactly. So I like it. I actually like that a lot.
All right, let's go ahead.
I know we're running low, so we'll rapid fire.
All right, we have Heineke, Barkley, Adams, and Pitts in here. Do we want to run back with a Minnesota player? We know Atlanta's been pretty good, although they weren't good last weekend on defense. Do we want to add another player onto the stack, or do you want to run it back with somebody?
With Atlanta, with Minnesota, it's just so hard to see what's going to happen. I don't like their running back options. I think you could do Hawkinson, but he's probably going to be expensive. Their running back options, I mean, here's the thing. Atlanta has given up 0 rushing touchdowns on the year, 0, and give up those second least fantasy points to running backs. So I'm not touching the running backs. I'm not touching the wide receivers with the quarterback unknown that's going on there. So maybe Hawkinson, but he's going to be expensive.
I don't think Hawkinson's too bad right now. He's sitting at 5,200, and he's pretty much a wide receiver at this point. He's putting up 15 points a game. We've seen the explosive games. My biggest concern about this matchup is that it's slow pace of play because they're bringing in Joshua Dobbs or Jaron Hall, I guess the rookie. It could be Joshua Dobbs by halftime. Who knows? But they're going to have to acclimate him to the offense. They're going to have to move things slowly. We're not going to see a ton of points generated. So maybe there is a hyper focus on points that are scored between Kyle Pitts and Taylor Heineke. Taylor Heineke runs in for a touchdown. We see Kyle Pitts score 2 in the receiving game, and that's it. Meanwhile, it's still just 21 to 14 at the end of the game.
But I think target-wise, don't we see a lot of Hawk?
We probably do with Jaron Hall. I'm down. Let's do Hawkins. Let's do a double tight end lineup. I love those. I think those are different all by themselves, and you can play chalk the whole rest of the lineup because not enough people play double tight end lineups. I'm down for that.
Got it.
All right, let's go ahead and throw in placeholder defense. I'm not going to put us into that big of a conundrum again as we were just in last time. Let's go ahead and put Indy up against Carolina for now. Okay. And we have running backs and wide receivers left. 2 wide receiver, 1 running back.
Okay.
2 wide receivers. 5,500.
Got it. So what do we need? 5,500 a piece, essentially.
Now, I do love Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers is in an interesting spot up against the zone coverage. He runs, or he averages out 2.32 yards per route run compared to 0.78 up against man coverage. Obviously, we talk about how the Seattle Seahawks are predominantly zone, and a lot of teams are, but there's just a massive difference for zone coverage by the Seahawks. I think Zay Flowers is interesting. He's a little chalky, but the price doesn't make him impossible to play in this one.
Yeah, no, I like Zay Flowers a lot. Again, we talk about that game, and who is Lamar going to look for? It's Zay. He's going to look for Zay all day. Zay all day.
I love that. Let's go. Let's go.
Zay all day. Let's go.
And we already maxed out our tight ends, so we can't go out and play Mark Andrews at this point either. So, it is what it is.
That's all right. I'm good with it. I like Kyle Pitts. I like Hawk. All right, so we got a wide receiver and a running back left, and we've got 10,900.
We're set up. I'll go ahead and I'll dive into one of my other sleepers real quick just to see if you're going to bite on this. Tank Dell saw 7 opportunities on 45 snaps last week. He only ran 25 routes, throughout that 45 snaps. So he's predominantly on the field for running plays. I expect him to do dirty up against the Bucs. The Bucs struggle up against wide receivers, allowing at least 249 yards in 2 of the past 3 games and over 200 yards receiving in 4 of the 8 games. And they're suspect at best in the slot. They're not good in the slot.
Yeah. I like that call a lot. It's something I've been looking at quite a bit as well. Tank Dell is, I mean, just his name alone speaks to, this is a guy I need on my team. It's one of those names you just want to root for just because of the name. So, and Houston, they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. And Nico was the guy at the beginning of the season, but he's spreading it around a little bit more. And Tank Dell is that guy that people are not covering. So I like it.
Yeah, I think that Tank Dell is a slam dunk this week. He's one of my favorite players to roll out there. I left him for my sleepers instead of going for the other position in terms of my locks, just because of his price and his lack of ownership. But I love some Tank Dell this week. Love it. All right, we got a running back left.
All right, so you talked about this a little bit earlier, and we're talking about just like high upside, could be cheap, could get. You talked about Jamal Williams a little bit. He's 4,300. So, and then we also have the Royce Freeman thing, but we put him in the last one. But Darrell Henderson is 5,100. If you want to get a piece of that same game, that same backfield, that same split, there's that available as well.
I mean, don't forget, like, Jamal Williams has only been back for a couple games. And I know he's splitting the field with everybody, but like, we're talking about red zone opportunities. There should be a plenty of them. Short field situations. We could be facing a blowout. If Jamal Williams gets a touchdown in the fourth, would you be surprised at all? If he ends up with 2 touchdowns this game, would you be surprised at all?
No, he's that guy. He's that dude, that comes in and you're like, how did that just happen? He's the how did that just happen dude.
Yeah. Well, we're left with 4,400. We can pivot all the way up to the Browns up against Arizona. We can also do the Saints and package that. All right,
give me that Saints G.
All right, that is in. That is our primary one. We have one contest left, folks. As I'm entering this in, Rosalie, could you tell me who your sleepers are for this week?
Well, my sleepers, we talked about them a little bit, which was I love Mac Jones this week. Again, he's 4,900. Yes, we don't trust the New England offense all that much, and especially losing Kendrick Bourne is a big deal. But Washington, even when they had Montez Sweat, even when they had Chase Young, they gave up 18 passing touchdowns. That's the most in the league. They've given up a lot of passing touchdowns and give up the second most points to opposing offense, the second most points to opposing QBs. They've even given up a rushing touchdown to a QB. So I like Mac Jones as a deep sleeper. Nobody's going to have him in their lineup.
Nobody will, and this is painful. And typically, I like to build a more expensive quarterback lineup, but I think it's smart to fade the more expensive ones this week. Let's do it. Let's build a Mac Jones lineup.
Look at you! You look so pained by it. but hey, Washington just gave up their edge rushers. Well, who's gonna get to him? He's gonna have no pressure.
There's a player that we have to put in here if we're building this lineup, and that's Demario Douglas, right? Like, there's no way that we can get away from Demario Douglas.
Yes, absolutely. You look at Demario Douglas and what he's become over the past few weeks. It's pretty. It's very, very pretty.
It's so pretty. Oh, I love that.
In terms of targets.
I love that. I didn't say I hated it. I love it.
Yeah.
No, I think that it's a great matchup over there in the slot. Washington struggles in the slot from time to time. We'll see who they end up having cover the slot this week. Obviously, they're probably going to have to increase their blitz percentage, which we haven't had to see because they can just rush 4 and still get to the quarterback. That's not going to be the case this week. They're going to be able to, or they're going to be forced to, blitz probably on a good 25% of their snaps if they want to get to the quarterback. That means that Demario Douglas is going to see a lot of one-on-one coverage or coverage up against linebackers. I think that's a slam dunk for Demario Douglas. He's definitely one of my sleepers that I have locked in this week. Meanwhile, go ahead.
I'm looking at if you have you thought about Hunter Henry too?
Oh my God, how gross are you getting on me right now?
I'm getting super gross on you right now.
Jesus. All right, let's go, Hunter Henry. Let's build this. I've gotten sick on this show once before. I'm just saying. Don't make me do it again. All right, we got
super gross.
got
I know. You know, it's New England's offense has been, but this is still, you know, I mean, how much is he? How much is he?
He's nothing. He's 3,600.
Yeah, he's nothing.
So the last time we went with a Patriots quarterback, we almost won the contest we were in. We got like in like the top 250 out of 20-something thousand entrants, and that was with Cam Newton running him out solo on the DFS show we did a couple years ago. So Patriots quarterbacks, I guess, is our secret sauce. Let's see if this
was I there for you for that? Did I call the Cam Newton thing?
You called Cam Newton. We ran him out butt ass naked. That's where the butt ass naked came from. That's where my DFS butt ass naked claim has come from. I talk about being butt ass naked all the time on the show from that show that we did back 2 years ago, where you called Cam Newton and you said, don't play him with a wide receiver. So we're doing it again.
This is going to be the second New England QB that, all right, I like it.
This is our fourth show together. This is our second one that we've done, our fourth DFS show together. This is the second one where we built a freaking New England Patriots quarterback build. Let's do it. All right. So that means we have plenty of, we can do anything we want at this point. I'm going to go ahead and throw in our defense. We have all the money, and also we're not playing chalk, so it really doesn't matter. We could get chalk for the entire rest of our lineup. I'm going to go and throw in the Colts defense again.
There we go.
We'll see. Let's see. We have 6,800 left for position.
We do another Kamara in there?
We have to do Kamara.
Yeah, I think so.
Saquon Barkley? Let's go. Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
All right. So we're left with 6,100. I feel like
and we've got 3 positions. All right.
I feel like we have to run it back because New England's not just going to score, right? They'll start running the ball because they want to run the ball. This has to be somewhat of a shootout.
Mm-hmm.
I think at that point, we're going to have to play Terry McLaurin. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the direction you want to go?
Do we do Terry McLaurin or do we do Dotson? We don't need to save money, do we? We don't need to save money. So
we don't need to.
Do Scary Terry.
Yeah, I mean, Jahan Dotson makes sense to an extent, but Jahan Dotson has been non-existent in this offense up until last week. Yeah. So I'd much rather go with the guy that we know they're going to rely on from week to week than go on a guy that is not happening for them. Even Curtis Samuel, I think I would rather do over Jahan Dotson, to be honest with you.
Is he fully available?
Let me see. Would you rather do him than Scary Terry? Because we can pivot all the way up if we get this girl.
No, I think I'd rather do Scary Terry.
I'm sorry. Curtis Samuel's out. I apologize.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, I wanted to make sure. I thought I saw that, but things change all the time.
That means that Scary Terry will probably alternate to the slot for part of the snaps, and then they're just going to put De'Ami Brown on the outside.
Yeah.
So that's great. That's a perfect lineup for Scary Terry. I love that.
Let's get him.
All right. We have 6,400 left, and we have a wide receiver and a flex position. So we want to pay up and go to one of these higher end guys and then pay down for the other position?
Yeah.
Or would we rather just do both guys around the 6K range?
I think give me a better wide receiver, and then the flex will find a nice, juicy.
Oh, man. We could play CeeDee Lamb at 82 and still get another player for 46.
Do it.
All right. Who we're looking at 46 for the flex?
46 for the flex.
KJ Osborne. We have Justice Hill, Royce Freeman, Antonio Gibson, which, by the way, would live up to this gross build. Rashid Shaheed, that's your dude.
There's Rashid. Give me more Rashid in my life.
All right. You're getting some Rashid Shaheed in your life.
And so
are you happy with this?
Kamara and Shaheed there.
I mean, we're maxed out on our cap. We can still roll with the Colts. No big deal.
I like it.
Mac Jones, Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley, Demario Douglas, Terry McLaurin, CeeDee Lamb, Hunter Henry, Rashid Shaheed, and the Colts defense. God, I got to get off the show before I puke everywhere. Let's go ahead and let's hit enter. I'm just going to leave this on the screen. I'm going to hit enter right now just so you see it. It's in there, people. It is in there. I just submitted that lineup. I did not bulk. I didn't fade. We just made that lineup happen.
I cannot wait until this is your best. The Mac Jones led lineup is your best one. I can't wait.
Oh, God, I can't even. All right, so let's go. I'm excited for it too. I'm excited. Rosalie, what you got going on? What are you doing inside the fantasy community? Can you give us a little bit of insight?
Oh, we've got a number of different things going on. We've got a number of different radio stations across the nation. So you can, if you're in Green Bay, if you're in Southern California, if you're in Phoenix, you can listen to me on the radio, and I'll answer your start-sit questions. And then, of course, my own content that I put out as well. And you can see those links on the Twitterverse. Oh, it's not Twitter anymore. It's X. Throwing up the X like Des Bryant took over.
Oh God, that's so true. That's so scary. Listen, thank you all for tuning in. It has been a pleasure. If you guys want to go give us a shout out, head over there to playerprofiler.com to see all the advanced analytics. If you all take one of our lineups that we built, the skeleton of a lineup, you guys can go throw it over there into the DFS Dominator. Go check that out. And of course, the First Mover podcast to give you a little bit of insight as to where we're going to go each week, because Mark Garcia over there is an absolute genius when it comes to that. Listen, from myself, from Rosalie Michaels, thank you all for tuning in and hanging out with us tonight. And make sure, if you're going to do kinky stuff behind the scenes, to have your curtains closed.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.